Morning, everybody. Happy New Year. 1st of January 2023. Good morning from Victoria, BC. I know it's afternoon where some of the others of you are, but out here on the West Coast, it's still bright and early in the morning. You've got me greeting you today, maybe because my name happened to be on the bottom of the invitation that you received, or maybe it's because I have the keys to this Zoom room that we're meeting in. However, it's not my place to host our meeting this morning. Rather, that's the role of our beloved and long-standing class secretary, Chris Ford. I got an email from Chris this morning. He had intended to be with us today, but he sent me an email to say he's going to be MIA because he's got the in-laws coming over for lunch. I'm not quite sure what that says about us, but nevertheless, I can assure Chris that he's going to be in our hearts today. I have agreed with Chris to chair these proceedings this morning and host this event in his stead and on his behalf. Thanks, Chris, for that honor. I'll do my best to represent you in the best of my ability, though I am certain that I will fall far short of your experience and expertise. Indeed, I know my limitations, and I know that it will take much more than me to get the job done right. So with that in mind, I've asked Corvo to join me today and host with me, and I'm delighted to say that he's accepted. Let me just try and find Paul here. I think there he is. Bonjour Paul, et bonne année à toi et au tien.
Oui, merci John, et bonne année à toi aussi. C'est vrai, John, que compte tenu que tu tiens la clé de Zoom pour nos réunions, Chris a vraiment raison de t'avoir demandé d'animer cette rencontre, mais il se peut aussi que tes grandes qualités d'interaction, ta créativité et ton enthousiasme naturel fassent partie de l'équation. Dans le choix et la demande de Chris, que tu prennes la relève pour la levée du nouvel an de 2023. J'en profite pour saluer Chris et le remercier du fond du cœur et au nom de tous nos confrères de la classe de 70 pour tout le travail qu'il a accompli au fil des ans à titre de secrétaire de notre classe. Et c'est avec gratitude que je le salue avec la moto de mon régiment, je me souviens. Et tout comme John, je vais faire de mon mieux pour co-animer cette rencontre. Maintenant, il s'agit de partir du bon pied. Alors, John, à toi l'honneur.
Okay, we are now ready to proceed.
Nous sommes prêts à commencer.
We call to order this, our third annual RMC Class of 70 New Year's Levee for 2023.
Alors, nous déclarons ouverte notre troisième rencontre de la levée annuelle du jour de l'an de la classe de 1970.
Welcome, classmates of the Class of 70 and your family and friends who may be joining us today. Thank you all for being here on this, the first day of 2023, and Happy New Year to you all.
Bienvenue à vous tous, camarades de la classe de 70. Bienvenue à votre famille. Bienvenue à vos amis qui se joignent à nous aujourd'hui. Merci d'être présents avec nous en ce premier jour de 2023. En fait, c'est le deuxième dans le cas de Robert Mitchell qui se trouve en Australie. Et nous en profitons pour vous souhaiter bonne année à vous tous. Est-il possible que nous soyons maintenant en 2023? Une lecture de notre liste de classe révèle que la majorité d'entre nous, 428 membres de la classe de 70, sont nés en 1948, ce qui signifie que la plupart d'entre nous célébreront notre 75e anniversaire cette année. Certains d'entre nous ont déjà franchi cette étape, j'en suis d'un, et on les appelle nos aînés. Par contre, il y en a quelques-uns qui sont plus jeunes, qui vont avoir ça seulement que l'année prochaine. Alors, oui, on peut dire que le temps nous rattrape. Et on ne peut pas lui échapper. John?
Merci. But while our aging bodies may be weaker than they were back in 1970, I'd like to think that our brotherhood is as strong as it has ever been, as is witnessed by our gathering here today. Those of you who know me well recognize that I am not studied in, and I'm certainly not practiced in matters of tradition and protocol, but I do hold the informal traditions of our class very dear, and while this tradition of our virtual New Year's annual gathering is only 3 years old, I'd like to nurture it and keep it going.
Par conséquent, nous suivrons le modèle que nous avons suivi auparavant. Il découle du protocole militaire de la levée du Nouvel An, que plusieurs ont vécu comme militaire. C'est une création à 100% canadienne, célébrée à travers le pays et parmi les Canadiens du monde entier.
We'll have a series of toasts, starting with the traditional formal toasts, then moving to some toasts in recognition that are pertinent to our class, and then on to an address or two that I suspect will lean more towards being entertaining than traditional.
Alors, commençons. Selon le protocole, en tant que vos hôtes, John et moi commencerons par le toast loyal que, dans sa forme de 2023, nous n'avons pas entendu depuis que nous étions bébés, ceux qui pouvaient comprendre ou entendre à l'époque. Selon la tradition, ce toast doit être fait avec une boisson de votre choix.
Glasses ready?
Les verres sont prêts?
Ladies and gentlemen,
Mesdames et messieurs,
the King of Canada.
le roi du Canada.
Canada.
Next on the agenda is the toast to our beloved Canada. And for this, we're going to call upon Rem Wesley. I've recently had the pleasure of getting reacquainted with Rem while we were shooting an interview of him in which he recounts his career and his post-career exploits over the past 50 years since we graduated together. Be assured that he has the tools he needs for the job at hand this morning. By the way, that interview will be presented at one of the upcoming reunions, so watch for the notice. Ladies and gentlemen, Rem Wesley.
Begin with thanking you, John and Paul, vous deux, là, pour les préparations pour aujourd'hui. As a Dutch-born member of the class, I really love the opportunity to present this toast. It fits well with the title of a thick book that was displayed in the foyer of the Massey Library in our day, titled Thank You, Canada. The book was presented by the Dutch government to the colleges. It recorded in pictures and text the liberation of Holland in 1945. In my first year, I well remember marching to class with the words, "You're welcome, recruit," chasing me along. So I could start with Thank You, Canada, but I'm going to take a couple of minutes to clear through some of the underbrush before I give the clarion call for a toast. C'est quasiment de rigueur dans nos jours de reconnaître les défauts et les défis de nos institutions avant de nous permettre des louanges. Our federal government, on behalf of all Canadians, has had to apologize for the residential schools, Japanese, Italian internment, for the Chinese head tax, to victims of sexual violence, for anti-Black racism, and for the treatment of LGBTQ community members. Our three largest provinces have apology acts in place. They've used that legislation to add additional apologies of their own. So Canada is far from perfect. The Royal Military Colleges are profoundly Canadian institutions. We have lived with and through all of Canada's imperfections. We still struggle, God knows, for fair play between men and women. We now devote a year of special training to help young Canadians of Indigenous descent gain access. Many individual cadets today, as in our time, must deal with the loneliness of difference, whether in sexual orientation, gender identity, race, color, or creed. Dans ce contexte, je veux noter le courage de nos collègues de langue française. Vous osiez vous joindre à nous en plein milieu de la Révolution tranquille. Rappelons que l'abbé Lionel Gros est décédé à Vaudreuil, Québec, le mois de mai 1967. Et pour nous, à Kingston, c'était le mois et l'année de notre feu de joie sur la colline parlementaire. Rappelons aussi que la crise d'octobre eut lieu dans l'année de notre graduation. Durant vos années au collège, surtout à Kingston, vous aviez vécu de proche les inégalités culturelles et linguistiques de notre pays. Yet ever since Canada was stood up in 1867, it's been one of the best places to live in all the world. It's been a country worth representing, worth defending, worth celebrating. The image of Canada as a country strong and free from coast to coast to coast is one that all Canadians keep striving for. To that enduring image of Canada, levons nos verres, let's raise our glasses, au Canada, to Canada.
Au Canada.
Au Canada.
Canada.
Eh bien, voilà, notre prochain toast s'adresse aux Forces armées canadiennes et à nos vétérans. Ce gars, l'un de nos meilleurs, a besoin de peu d'introduction et c'est une bonne chose parce que si je devais énumérer ses éloges, nous serions ici toute la journée. Alors, bonjour Marc, c'est un plaisir de te voir ici. Mesdames et messieurs, Marc Garneau.
Merci beaucoup, Paul, pour tes paroles généreuses. Bonjour, chers amis. I'll get there in a minute on the toast, but thank you for allowing me to provide it. It's an honor to provide a toast to the Canadian Armed Forces and to our veterans. Comme vous, j'ai servi dans nos forces armées et j'en garde de bons souvenirs. Je crois qu'on peut dire que la profession militaire est unique de plusieurs façons. Une profession qui est certes exigeante et qui demande des sacrifices. C'est aussi une profession qui est parfois dangereuse et qui demande du courage. C'est une profession où nous sommes tous liés par un but commun, celui de servir notre pays. Colleagues, I recently had the pleasure to attend an event in Ottawa given by an organization which you may not have heard of called True Patriot Love Foundation. And it's a wonderful organization, and you may wish to look at their website online. The foundation focuses on 4 goals. One is supporting military servicemen and women and their families. Second one is prioritizing their well-being. The third one is improving the rehabilitation and recovery journey. And the fourth is fostering connections with the community. Colleagues, I think we all know that the transition from military to civilian life has been difficult for some, particularly for those who have suffered physical and emotional trauma during their service time. Let's keep them in mind in our thoughts as we begin this new year. Let us celebrate our servicemen and servicewomen and those who have gone before them. We owe them a debt of gratitude. They have responded to the call of duty and served their country because that is what they swore to do, and they did it, no matter the danger, no matter the sacrifices. So, dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, please raise your glass with me to this toast to our Canadian Armed Forces and to our veterans.
For veterans.
Vétéran.
Thank you, Mark. We move now to the class-specific portion of our proceedings. And before I do that, I got to find 3 of you, so give me a minute. Rick Lancaster, good morning. Bill Brewer. Is that you? There we go. Jeff Holt. Okay, as I said, we start now with the class-specific portion of our proceedings and start by taking the solemn time to recall and reflect upon those of our brotherhood who we have lost over the years.
Nous passons maintenant à la partie qui concerne spécifiquement notre classe en consacrant un moment solennel pour nous rappeler nos confrères qui nous ont déjà quittés Et pour commencer, nous demandons à Bill Brewer de lire les noms des disparus qui sont originaires du CMR de Saint-Jean. Bill?
Jeff Holt to read the names of those who entered through the gates of RMC, and Rick Lancaster to tell us of those who started at Royal Rose. We will follow with a few minutes of silence. Gentlemen.
So I guess I'll start off, John, because I've got the first one on the list.
Yep.
Mesdames et messieurs, c'est un grand honneur pour moi de commencer avec la liste de nos compères perdus. Gentlemen, since the first member of our fallen classmates list by college number comes from CMR, I have the distinct honor of starting the list. 82-20, Alain Benioche.
8385, Bill Bentley.
8482, Pat Bitts.
8391, Larry Cade. 8020, Terry Cave.
8247, David Cogden. 8264, Normand Doré. 8278, Mario Genteletti.
8511, Walter Palchuk.
8284, John Hall. 8285, Rob Hall.
8516, Bill Herod.
8204, Jacques Jobin. 8298, Charles Kraus.
8536, Joe Lang. 8542, Peter Ludorf. 8544, John McDonald.
8438, Gary Manchester. 8439, Sonny Marsh.
8325, Lauren McCartney.
8057, Ross McKenzie. Danny McLeod fits in here on our list.
8556, Gary Mueller.
8334, Keith Murray.
8562, Pat Patterson.
8355, Robin Ross.
8462, Robin Ross.
I made a mistake. It should have been Robert Ross. 8368, Larry Travis. 8375, Jean Verlinden. 8376, Jean Villecourt.
8473, Alan Walker.
7974, Rick Ward.
8601, James Webster. 8603, Eric Wittes.
And lost to us in 2022, since our last New Year's Day levy 1 year ago. We start with 8399, Wild Bill Clark. 8441, Ron Maxwell.
8557, Peter Murray.
8339, Bob Nowitzki. 8366, Douglas Taylor Monroe. Et finalement, 83-73, Donald D.Y. Vachon.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. Paul, I'm going to get you back here.
Yep.
All right. Following the hint from last year, we've plugged in an intermission so we can all have a bathroom break. So it's 9:30. How about if we reconvene at 20 to 10? That's BC time. You guys can figure it out. 10 minutes from now.
It would be,
Okay, guys. Shall we get going again? All right. Back in the day when most of us were training our bodies for athletics of some sort, these next two guys were exercising their brains so that they could represent the rest of us in intercollegiate debating competitions. That and thriving as co-editors-in-chief of The Marker, essentially blogging before blogging was even imagined. I'm not sure about the editor-in-chief part. I'm not sure if that label's the correct one. And I don't know if what they would consider what they were doing back then as blogging, but if I've got it wrong, I'm sure they're going to correct me. No longer Officer Cadets Clark and Kiefer. These guys have come a long way since. If I can find them, let me introduce you to them. All right, H.C. Richard Clark, King's Counsel, Dr. Michael H. Kiefer, Professor Emeritus, University of Guelph. Gentlemen.
Well, I'm going to go first. This section of the schedule sort of had a weird origin. It started with an email to me from John, who said, I've just been emailing back and forth with Mike, and you guys should do something together for our record.
I think what
When
had
John
happened.
asks, you tend to agree, but I needed a little more information, so I said, well, what should it be about? And John said, well, I've just been reading all the words to Old Lang Syne, so do something about that. So that's what we decided to do. Now, it was, in fact, a totally unreasonable request to make of us, really. Mike lives 4,632 kilometers from where I live. And I know he won't be insulted when I say this, and he's just proved it to be true. But he and I are the two technological buffoons, I think, that are attached to the tail end of our class. We were that way at college, and we're still that way. So we didn't have any Zooms to plan this. We didn't have any Facebook to plan this. We made 2 phone calls, most of which seemed to be about our kids and our grandkids. And we concluded the call by saying, well, right, I guess what we'll do is we'll just wing it. So that's what we're going to do. I have no idea what Mike is going to say. Mike has no idea what I'm going to say. So this may be a sort of a schizophrenic section with 2 different speeches. I can say that I think I'm the right guy to share the screen with Mike, because some years ago, he and I and a bottle of Southern Comfort climbed up into a tree out on the grounds up near where that airplane was and proceeded to solve all the problems of the world. We did such a good job, you can tell by the problems that we still have, but if you can sit in a tree with Mike Kiefer and argue about philosophy, I think you can share a screen with him. So that's my qualifications for doing that. I think that both what Mike and I are going to be doing, though, is kind of toasting us. we read in the papers that the college is under attack. We read that it's outdated. We read that it's an anachronism. And I don't know anything about that. My post-college military experience was a few summers sailing gate vessels up and down the coast of Labrador, giving bullets to the Arctic Rangers. So I can't really comment on that. And I guess maybe times were different when we went to school, but the good and bad times that we went through created something pretty special for us all, I think. And the thing that I find that is so special is that when we see each other, it's like it was yesterday, and we're comfortable with each other. It's like pulling on a well-worn Wellington to be with people, especially the people that used to be your buddies. My favorite story about that involves Russ Crum, actually, and this is some years ago. And Russ was involved in a lawsuit with a guy who was in the law firm that I was with. And they were conducting what are called examinations for discovery, which is questioning the parties before trial. And there's no judge there, but there's a court reporter and there's a transcript, and it's a pretty significant event in a lawsuit, and everybody takes it really seriously. And so Russ and this fellow were doing their examinations for discovery in our boardroom, which happened to have a glass wall. And when I got back to the office from somewhere, and I'm walking past the glass wall into the boardroom, and I look in, and Russ and I happen to just see each other at the same time. And so Russ bolts up out of his chair, crashes out through the door, and we stand there in the hall hugging each other and laughing, to the great dismay of his clients, who clearly felt that Russ had gone over to the dark side and was a traitor of some sort. But the other thing that's special about us, I think, is that we've always been a little bit irreverent in the way we approach life. I remember in some summer training, we had these code books with all the flag codes and everything in it. And on the cover of the code book, it said, well, this code isn't secret anymore. The Russians probably have all this stuff. And they did that because of a ship by the name of USS Pueblo, which you may remember was captured by the North Koreans, and everything was compromised. Now, flash forward to West Point weekend, and the old frigate Inch Aaron, which was anchored in the bay just off the causeway. And a group of us, led by, God rest his soul, Larry Cade, went out and painted US Pueblo on the side of the Inch Aaron to welcome the West Point cadets to the college. And that's the kind of thing that we seem to do. I remember one time we were in San Francisco on the destroyers, so I'm not sure what summer that was, but there was 3 sort of groups of us, and we all had to muster on the jetty and go for a jog about 6 or 6:30 in the morning, whenever it was. And Ray Riddell was in charge of us at the time. So we jogged off smartly in ranks and in unison and all the rest of it around the corner of a warehouse, stopped there for 10 minutes. I think I had a smoke. And then we formed up and jogged right back to the ship again. So typical of Ray, he led us into and out of more scrapes than anybody I can remember. So I think that Mike and I have agreed that Mike will talk, then I'll say a couple more words, and then Mike again. And so that's over to you, Mike.
Okay, am I unmuted?
Yep.
Okay, you can hear me?
Perfectly.
I actually pressed the right button. Woohoo. Yeah. With regard to the code book, I think I know how the Russians got hold of it. I can remember on exercises, the code would come through Ginger, Foxtrot, Alpha, Charlie 1, and then one doesn't mean it, and there would be an en clair explanation, and you could see little lights going off in the suspicious looking trawler that was accompanying our exercises. I think that's how it's going. Now, one of the things that passed through my head when Rich and I were chatting on the phone was the oddity of the fact that here we are more than half a century after undergoing common experiences that were enjoyable, sometimes painful, sometimes stressful. They certainly tested our capacities. If I can slip into Acadian for a moment, I taught for nearly a decade in Nova Scotia at Nova Scotia's apology to the Acadians, Université Sainte-Anne. The Acadians would say, "Vraiment chickafor," which means that's bloody amazing. Or one put it differently, it's a kind of sociological anomaly. Like, what is it with these guys? Half a century on, they're still getting together on Zoom. They're listening to each other. They're talking to each other. They're remembering dear friends who are no longer with us. They're remembering follies. I'll just mention one of my own. We'd sometimes talk about throwing people under the bus. You know, time you've passed through a long career as we have, we've all seen people thrown under buses, and it's pretty sad. Well, I was chatting some time ago with Ray Rodella, and he said, "Michael, do you remember when I pulled you out from under the bus?" And I said, "No, who put me there?" He said, "Well, it was the 100 Days party. You came down that set of icy steps outside the hotel where we were drinking more than we should have. And you slid and you went right smack under the bus. Your hands were sticking out from one side and your feet from the other, which is a good thing given your length." And he said, he didn't tell me whether he pulled on the hands or feet, but he got me out from under the bus. So I'm grateful for that. Maybe I can pass it back to you, Rich. Do you have an explanation for this sociological anomaly? Like, what's with us? I've stumped you, Rich.
Yeah, you have. I have no idea, although I suspect Riddell's behind it somehow. That's a guy who got us into more scrapes and out of more scrapes than anybody I can think of. My favorite involves potted plants in Victoria. We'd been to a dinner at Mr. Mike's, which was the only place in town that would serve us alcohol because we were like 19 or something, or 17.
No relative of mine.
And we had to get back to the base. And so we thought we'd get a cab. And I know, John, you were there because you climbed up into the flower pots on the lamppost to try and flag down a cab. And instead of a cab arriving, the gendarmes arrived in a couple of cars. And then enter Ray, who went to the officers and said, "Well, these poor men have been at sea for 6 months and they're just blowing off a little steam, but don't worry, I've got everything well in hand." And by the end of the encounter, he had persuaded them to drive us back to the base so that we didn't have to bother getting a cab. And, that's typical of Ray, who, as I say, got us into more scrapes than he could get us out of many times. But things, we used to help each other out, and I guess that's still the way we feel. I can remember one time doing that ridiculous run around Fort Henry, where I think they called it Wing Harriers or something, but you had to run up and around Fort Henry and rack back down. And if you didn't do it in the requisite time, you had to show up the next day or two after class. And Bear and I would always be there and run interminable laps around the parade square until they felt you punished yourself enough for not finishing in time. But one year, as I was struggling up the hill, Rob Ross, God rest his soul, comes up behind me and puts his palm in the back of the small of my back and says, "Let's go, Rolly," and literally pushed me up the hill so that I finished in the great big cloud of people that finished all in time and at the same time. And I always remember the officer who was in charge of the thing looking at me like I was one of those Boston Marathon interlopers that joined the thing only partway through, and there couldn't have been any other explanation. But those are the things I remember about you guys. Rem, I remember that book in the library, and Paul and I giving you heck. We told you weren't grateful enough, as I recall it. I remember things like that with all of you, and I'm proud to be part of this group. And we should have a toast to ourselves after Mike finishes this thing off.
Well, I don't have much to add to that, Rich. I think that was very eloquent. I have to say I have a parallel memory of going around the parade square in birds, and somewhere in the middle of the group was Rich, his feet just gently off the ground, being in effect carried around by the rest of the group as we ran in step around the parade square. So yeah, there was a good deal of mutual help, and I think that's something that's stuck with us. John, we've probably gone over time, have we?
There are no limits, Mike. We're glad to hear the stories.
Here's to us.
To us.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Awesome.
guys.
To us.
I shall have to run upstairs and get a whiskey bottle.
I have to note, guys, that on several occasions you mentioned Ray Riddell and how he gets you into and out of trouble. Indeed, I concur with that assessment of Ray. In fact, how I think of Ray is this: the guy that gets you into trouble, and then when you turn around looking for him, he has magically disappeared. Which, if you note, Ray was with us earlier today, and yep, he has magically disappeared. He's no longer here. So at this point, I have to sincerely apologize to the team of volunteers because I got the order of events all wrong. Richie and Mike, you were supposed to be at the end, so stand by. You might have to do it again. Just kidding. But at this point, I was going to introduce you to Paul Cochivot. And if you read to the end of all of the messages that I sent to you, and I know that you all do, you will recall that a year ago I shared an email from Paul Cochivot in which he explained to me the tradition of the New Year's Father's Blessing, still widely practiced in Quebec. He also passed on at that time his touching and so relevant blessing that he and Marcel gave to their family 1 year ago. Paul is clearly a man of faith with a deep well of love for his family and his home. Who better to give our annual toast to family? Ladies and gentlemen, Paul Cochivot.
Mesdames, Messieurs, pour moi, la famille nous est donnée à la naissance. Elle nous donne le premier élan dans notre vie. Elle nous instrumente et souvent, elle oriente nos choix au début de notre cheminement professionnel. Puis, les expériences de nos choix, de nos valeurs, de nos relations nous permettent d'établir l'élan que nous donnons à notre propre famille, que nous donnons à nos enfants, qui à leur tour fondent leur famille. Frères d'armes, compagnons de la classe de 70, trinquons à nos familles respectives et souhaitons que chacun d'entre nous poursuive son évolution dans l'amour et la paix. The family is given to us at birth. It gives us the first impulse in our life. It provides us with instruments and often guides our choices at the beginning of our professional journey. Then the experiences of our choices, our values, our relationships allow us to establish the impetus we give to our children, who in turn start their own families. Brothers in arms, companions of class of 70, let us toast to our respective families and wish that each of us continues to progress in love and peace. Comme le dit le Jedi, que la force nous guide et nous accompagne pour le reste de cette vie. As the Jedi says, may the force guide and accompany us for the rest of this life. Messieurs, gentlemen, nos familles, our families.
To our family.
To our families.
Lorsque nous avons demandé pour des bénévoles afin de contribuer aux activités d'aujourd'hui, le prochain compagnon de classe a répondu immédiatement à l'appel. Ce genre d'empressement et de dévouement en dit long sur sa relation avec notre classe et sa vision de celle-ci. En conséquence, il est approprié que Derwin nous donne notre toast de la classe RMC de Mesdames et Messieurs, Derwin Hayes.
Bonjour tout le monde. Gentlemen, it is a privilege today for me to propose a toast to the class of 70. First, I would like to salute John for his efforts on our behalf in organizing another successful Zoom levee, as well as our monthly resumions over the last 3 years. Thanks, John. I would also like to thank Chris Ford for his 50+ years of exemplary service as our class secretary. Outstanding work and dedication. Chris, thank you. I'm sure I speak for all of us that 56+ years ago, when we first entered the grounds of our respective colleges, little did we know what our future would hold or how significantly it would be shaped by those formative years at military college. From our recruit class of 400+ cadets, many would graduate and go on to make our country and the world a better place. Some would provide senior leadership in the Canadian Forces during times of peace and times of tension and war. Some served in peacekeeping roles and during natural disasters at home and abroad. Some would continue postgraduate studies to advance their military careers or start new careers in a wide range of disciplines. Some would become entrepreneurs and start successful businesses. One would even leave this world to become the first Canadian in space. We can be very proud of the wide range of accomplishments that our class has attained. The training, challenges, and camaraderie provided us those many years ago is the cornerstone to forming who we are today. Would you please join me in a toast to this band of brothers we know as the class of 70. Salut.
La classe of 70.
Salut to us.
Paul, it's out of order, but I wonder if you could introduce Cliff Squires. Yep. I didn't check to make sure Cliff is here, but I think he is.
Bon, pour maintenir nos traditions de classe, il est devenu traditionnel que notre poète lauréat de classe, Cliff Squires, compose et récite un poème spécial pour nous envoyer sur notre chemin de 2023. Nous sommes donc ravis d'annoncer que Cliff est ici une fois de plus pour poursuivre cette tradition. Alors, cela dit, que la tradition soit donnée, Cliff nous dit qu'il va changer cette année la façon de faire. Alors, je ne sais pas ce qu'il a à l'esprit. Je ne voulais pas le demander, mais je suis sûr que ce sera agréable. Alors, Cliff, mesdames et messieurs, Cliff, à toi. Vas-y.
Merci, Paul. So hopefully I'm in there with Rolly and Mike on the technological side. So I'm hoping this is working, that you can all hear and see me. I have to kind of use a dual technology system of a 20-year-old computer and my cell phone to make things work.
It's working perfectly.
So it's worked great. Okay. So, I've written a poem or two about the class, and I know that some of the artsmen probably don't mind it, but I figure a lot of the technical people, they don't even know how to spell poem and certainly don't want to listen to one. But so I thought I'd try a song this time, and not just a song, but a song with a chorus that you all sing along. Because I know that, some of the sports teams, the tougher sports teams like rugger and soccer, and that Rick and I were on the badminton team, we had these sing-alongs. So I think you'll recognize the melody, if that's the right word. And so here's the chorus that we will all sing after each verse. Now, I don't have a great singing voice either, and but I must say one thing I have learned this morning is that that your day starts off better if you have a bunch of Jim Beam bourbon in your coffee. So I think I'll kind of stick to that going forward. Anyway, let's give this a try. So this is the chorus that you all have to learn and sing whenever I tell you to. Whenever I tell you it's chorus time. Here's to the class of 70, from the shortest to the tall. If you've never partied with our class, you've never partied at all. How's that? I'll do it one more time. Here's to the class of 70, from the shortest to the tall. If you've never partied with our class, you've never partied at all. And then I'll do all the verses in between. It was the gathering of the class for a troisième Zoom Levee. There were no boasts, but only toasts to welcome New Year's Day. Chorus. Here's the class of 70, shortest to the tall. You've never partied with our class, never partied at all. Now, if you remember the song that melody comes from, they then sing about all the people that were there, you know, like the village idiot and the queen and all of that. So, of course, I'll try to do for some of the ones that were here. Now, Johnny Hills was there, of course. He makes the Zoom thing fly, and he still can call a square dance if you'll only let him try. Singing
class of 70, the shortest to the tall.
If you've never partied with our class, you've never partied at all. Encore c'est un bonhomme par français pour nous tous, parce que nous maudit anglais, our accent's getting worse.
Here's to the class of 70, from the shortest to the tall. If you've never partied with our class, you've never partied at all.
Now Ram Westman did clearly speak, as always was his bent. In toasting this great land of ours, each word was truly meant.
Here's to the class of 70, from the shortest to the tall. If you've never partied with the class, you've never partied at all.
Not quite in sync, but that's okay. And Mark Garneau, a toast also, he gave with style and grace. And when he finished, he did stare forlornly into space.
Here's to the class of 70, from the shortest to the tall. If you've never partied with the class, you've never partied at all.
Then Jeff and Bill and Rick did read the names of classmates gone. They'll stay forever in our minds as time keeps marching on.
Here's to the class of 70, from the shortest to the tall. If you've never partied with the class, you've never partied at all.
Derwin Hayes of Redman fame, he also spoke so well, commemorating our great class. Some still are raising hell.
Here's to the class of 70, from the shortest to the tall. If you've never partied with the class, you've never partied at all.
Chris Ford wrote, "What a marvelous job. Well done by all of you. The pay is just like years before, not a single bloody sou."
Here's to the class of 70, from the shortest to the tall. If you've never partied with the class, you've never partied at all.
And Rolly and our tallest Mike, we all know the Kiefer name. From all those many years ago, they still sound both the same.
Here's to the class of 70, from the shortest to the tall. If you've never partied with the class, you've never partied at all.
Last verse. Now many other lads were there. We don't have a verse for each. Just Happy New Year, one and all, 2023. Here's
to the class of 70, shortest to the tall. If you've never partied with the class, you've never partied at all.
Wow, that went pretty well.
Well done, Tiffy.
Well done.
Boy, Cliffy.
Well done, Cliff.
Again.
That was fun.
Jeez.
Well, it's great to see so many people on, that's for sure. And as has already been mentioned, sorry that Chris is not with us, not able to join the levee, but lots of people on, so that's good. And well done, all of you. It was great. All the toasts were great. And, even though Johnny screwed up the order a bit, we can't fault him too much because if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't be doing this at all. So, well done again, John.
Our record. Thanks so much, bud. And that will be on YouTube. I can guarantee it. One more time before we finish off today. Let's tak a right good willy what. Let's take a cup of kindness yet for old lang syne. Let's raise our glasses once more for old time's sakes. For old time's sake.
Old time's sake.
For old time's sake.
And with that, we call these proceedings, our third annual class of 70 New Year's Levee, to a close. Thank you all for coming. Don't go away. It's going to be open mic and unstructured from here on for as long as you want. Enjoy it. Paul?
Pour ça, nous allons mettre fin à ces procédures, à notre troisième rencontre de la levée du Nouvel An de la classe de 70. Merci à tous d'être venus et ne partez pas. C'est un micro ouvert et non structuré à partir d'ici. Profitez-en et bonne année à tous et chacun. Que la force soit avec vous.
Thank you, Paul, and thank you so much for doing this with me. Thank you, everybody who participated. Thank you all for coming. Happy New Year to you all.